This episode of How I Built It is brought to you by two great sponsors. The first is our season-long sponsor. Liquid Web has been best known as a managed hosting company with tons of options. It's also designed a managed WordPress offering that is perfect for mission-critical sites. If you're looking for improved performance, maximized uptimes, and incredible support, Liquid Web is the partner you've been looking for. Every Liquid Web managed WordPress customer has iTheme Sync integrated into their managed portal, allowing them to update several sites with a single touch. Liquid Web hosts all of my critical websites, and I couldn't be happier with them. If you sign up today, using the discount code HowIBuiltIt33, you get 33% off for the next 6 months. Visit buildpodcast.net/liquid to get started. That's buildpodcast.net/liquid. It's also brought to you by WP Site Care. WP Site Care is the premier support and maintenance service for high-profile bloggers and small businesses. They get technology out of your way so you can focus on doing the things you love. With custom packages built to meet your specific needs, their team learns what you need to prosper in your online business, and then they get to work to help you be successful. WP Site Care loves working with creative and advertising agencies to fill in the gaps for technology and WordPress expertise. Share the offer code BUILT with your friends and clients to save 20% on their Protect or Professional packages. Or, if you need something more specialized, contact them at any time at hello@wpsitecare.com, and they're happy to help. That's offer code BUILT for 20% off any annual plan, and they've got two. So if you've got a blog or small business site that you need to protect, head over to buildpodcast.net/protect for their Protect plan, or buildpodcast.net/pro if you need something a little more advanced. Hey everybody, today we have part 2 of our Educational WordPress series, and I talked to Justin Ferriman of LearnDash. In the episode, we talk about building an audience through a blog to generate interest and gauge interest. We talk about the importance of communication, not only with your customers, but also with your developers. And we talk about a whole lot more. So I really enjoyed this episode. I'm a big fan of LearnDash. I used it at WP in 1 month. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So without further ado, on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of How I Built It, the podcast that asks, how did you build that? Today, my guest is LearnDash founder, Justin Ferriman. Justin, did I say your last name right?
Yes, you did. I've heard it said a lot worse, so you're good, Joe.
Excellent. That is the unofficial first question of the episode. I always forget to ask in pre-recording. So today we're going to be talking about LearnDash. LearnDash is a plugin that a big fan of. I use it at WP in 1 month, and by the time this episode comes out, you'll have some brand spanking new tutorial videos recorded by yours truly. But before you view those, why don't we ask Justin, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and the product and how you came up with the idea?
I'd be happy to, Joe. So back in 2012, I was working as a full-time e-learning consultant, setting up learning programs at large companies and for the U.S. government. And I was on the road a lot. And so I remember thinking, this is good for now, but I eventually want to stop living in hotels, which is what I was doing 4 or 5 days a week. And I was on one project, and we were talking about which learning management system to use, and somebody mentioned open source, and Moodle was the one that was mentioned, and it's a very popular open source learning management system. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if WordPress has something, because at the time, WordPress was just kind of a fun thing for me. I did some blogging, and then I also had set up some sites for some family members. So I just always dabbled in it. And I went and looked on the repository. There was nothing there. And I think the more I thought about it, I was like, that's a pretty cool idea. So I set up a blog in March 2012 and started blogging about the concept. Just say, hey, this is what I think a learning management system would look like on WordPress. And then I also blogged about other e-learning topics and items that I was passionate about. And it wasn't until, maybe about halfway through 2012 that I was talking with my wife, who co-founded with me, and we were getting a lot of interest. And by that, I mean people signing up for an email list. I put a little sign-up form on the blog just to see if there was any traction there. And people started signing up and asking questions and thinking it would be a cool idea. So it was later that year that we decided to pull the trigger and find someone to build it based on our specifications. And January of 2013, at the end of January, is when we officially launched.
Nice. So you and your wife co-founded, and then you hired a developer to do it. So do you code at all? Front end, back end, dabble?
I don't. I know how to have those conversations with people. When I was doing my e-learning consulting, we were creating courses. It was often on very technical concepts, and I had to use wireframes to communicate with the subject matter experts who were giving me that information. Then I'd translate that information for the end user. And so I knew how to talk that language, but I don't know how to code. My wife doesn't know how to code. So we knew we needed to find someone to do that. And that was a big part of 2012 is when we kind of decided this is pretty cool. I think we're going to do it. There's interest there. Is how do we find somebody first of all that we can trust, and what's that going to look like? So it was a lot of interviewing going on of both just freelancers and firms, etc. So that we eventually found who that would be, and we started that process.
Nice, that's awesome. So basically, up until this point, everybody I've interviewed has either been a developer or their partner was a developer. So this is kind of new territory for the podcast. Can you talk a little bit about what the process of hiring a developer is like? Like what was the, how did you define your requirements and what kind of questions did you ask? Because I think that's really valuable stuff that we don't really talk about, at least on this show.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One of the things that for people that don't know how to code something out themselves, one of the difficult things I think from a developer standpoint is people have ideas in their head and they say, oh, this is what I want it to look like. Can you make it happen? And that's great because it makes sense inside that person's head. But for a developer, and most developers, they like to maybe better visualize or see process flows. And so one of the things that was important that we did in this process was create these wireframes about the functionality we wanted from day one and kind of a process flow for each thing. So like the user clicks here, when they click mark complete, this lesson indicator changes to a different color, they're routed to the next lesson. So just creating those simple wireframes, I think I did it in Microsoft Excel, and having that standardized document to then take to the different people that we were talking to, that was key. So they could understand the concept. In addition to that, though, I think there's a non-technical component for finding developers or talking with firms, for instance. And if you think that you'll get along with them, for in business. So I'm big on communication. I think it's the only way that anything gets done. So I couldn't, knowing me, I would become frustrated if I had somebody that was locked away in a room, maybe working on the product, but I have no insight into what's going on. And so a lot of that was just getting people on the phone, and if they got frustrated after like 2-3 calls before the project even started, then okay, well, that's probably a good indication that we probably shouldn't work together. So that was another part of it. So my advice to anybody that is looking for someone to kind of create their dream is to make it as clear as possible on in whatever format you like. I used Excel because it makes sense to me, but make it as clear as possible what you want it to do, and even you don't have to be a designer. Mock up what you think it will look like. You can use Microsoft Paint or something. It doesn't matter, but to give a little bit of a visual too, and then also make sure that whoever you're hiring is blending with the way that you work, what your expectations are, and be just brutally honest. That's what I was. I would say up front, like I am kind of really hung up on communication. So like if I send an email, I expect that you get back to me like within that day. So those are my two things. And a lot of it is just kind of in some respects a gut feeling. I tried to find somebody that was local because that way I could actually see them and talk to them about it. In an ideal world, that would have been what I did, but it didn't work out. But maybe if you can find somebody locally that you can just have like a face-to-face meeting throughout the project here or there, that'd be helpful.
Gotcha. That's a lot of great advice. Speaking from a developer standpoint, any visuals to help me understand the flow of the project, especially when you're building a plugin that relies, it doesn't rely on the design as much as the user experience, because people are going to add their own themes, and
yes,
so the design is going to be, will be different throughout. But understanding the experience and what takes users from one step to another, is really important. And in software engineering, we learned about user stories, which is basically that. Alice logs on to the site. She signs up for a course. She sees the course introduction. So
exactly.
So that's fantastic. You touched on this a little bit. So when you had the idea for LearnDash, you went to the repo. Did you do, or I guess really, what research did you do as far as feature set goes? Like, what did you know you needed for day one?
Another great question. I think a lot of what was going to be in the feature set for day one, I already kind of knew. I was working in learning management systems every day, all day, and there was a core set of features that I knew had to be there, at least from the very beginning. Now, of course, we were missing a lot of stuff from the version 1.0 that I would have loved to have in there, but just when you have to get something to market, you just got to get it out. So that was, for example, we added gamification later on in the process, but we, a lot of it I knew already. I write almost daily, even still, 4 or 5 times a week about e-learning, and so my finger's always on the pulse. And I knew at the time where the trends were, and I knew what I wanted. But some of it, I will give credit to people who wrote in when I was blogging about the concept, or they would leave some comments on the blog, say, "Will it do this or will it do that?" And I do remember a few times thinking, that's a good idea. Let's see if we can try to get that into version 1.0, or if not 1.0, soon after. So that was generally just kind of pulling the audience a little bit and going off of trusting myself really in terms of the feature set and what I wanted it to do from day one.
That's excellent. So it was a little bit you're in the space and you know what the competition had, and then listening to your customers, which is a recurring theme here on How I Built It. I think people are often talking about how a lot of research they did comes from just feedback they got from their customers and what their customers wanted.
Certainly. Yeah, I think that's there's a balance, though, I will say, just to give the other side of it too. I mean, your customers are going to offer up feature suggestions in ways that will very much help their situation or how they're using your product, as they should. The job of you as a business owner is to figure out, okay, which of those ideas can we either modify so it applies to more people than just one, or if it's not a good idea for the masses, to just explain, that's a great suggestion, thank you, and then maybe explain why that you won't be doing it, and that's fine. It's okay to say no, but listening to your customers and making them feel comfortable about giving suggestions is key.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there was a great article by 37 Signals, well, now Basecamp, but about how, they get flooded with suggestions and they'll default to no until they get enough justification to add in a feature. And, you are the gatekeeper of that, but you also need to do what's best for the masses, right?
Mm-hmm.
I go to Disney World frequently, like twice a year, 3 times a year. My brother works down there. And without fail, every time I'm in the park, I'll overhear somebody say, you know what they should do, and then something like super specific to their situation. So it is good to get suggestions, but it's also important to know that the suggestions might not be best for a wider audience.
Sure. Yeah.
And speaking about features and what's good for your business and things like that, I talk often about being in a mastermind group on this podcast, or just bouncing ideas off of people. Do you have people that you bounce ideas off of? Are you part of a mastermind group or anything like that?
I do. I'm not part of a mastermind group, but I do have people that I trust and that I've kind of met either before my journey in entrepreneurship or since the launch of our product. So that kind of came about organically. As you do business and you talk with different people, and if someone else is running a business either in a similar space or not, they can be that person that you bounce ideas off of. So yeah, I had that. I was fortunate to have some just trusted life friends before we started. But to be honest, before we launched, it was something that was, I held my cards close to the chest, because before you have a product, everybody has an idea. So
right.
It's hard to get practical advice at that time, because either people don't believe it yet, or they're not really understanding the concept. But as we launched a business and then we started facing, issues or problems, or just challenges, I should say, having people to talk to is definitely good. It definitely has helped us. And that would be people in the WordPress space. That would also people outside the WordPress space. So if somebody's starting a product, listening to your podcast here, and they're like, "Oh, I want to make sure I have a network of coaches or mastermind." Joining masterminds can be certainly helpful. Unfortunately, I can't speak to that directly. But what I can say is that you can get involved in the WordPress community if the product is WordPress related, and go to conferences and stuff. If it's not WordPress related, then figure out your industry, whatever. If they have a get together, a meeting, a meetup, whatever, I'm sure they do, and just start going and talking with people and forming genuine connections. Shouldn't it be something like, oh, I'm going to need your help, so I'm going to just talk to you because of that. But just networking really, and then you'll see that over time it sifts itself out, and you find the people that you trust.
Yeah, that's absolutely excellent, and that's, I think, one of the biggest false positives that you can get before you have a product is, hey, I'm thinking about making this. Would you buy it? Yeah, sure, I guess. Or like that's, and then when it actually comes time to do it, people are probably less likely to do it. So
yeah,
that's really great advice. And meetup.com is a great resource for not just WordPress meetups, which are pretty common, but if you're in the Drupal community or anything like that, or not at all, like in the web community, if you build like 3D games or whatever, I'm sure you could find somebody or find a meetup group in your area for that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we are approaching the title question here, which is, how did you build it? So we talked a little bit about what you did to find a developer. So maybe we could talk about a little bit about the requirements you set out, how you run your business. This is really a pretty open-ended question based on the thing that you know best. And I will caveat this a little bit for you. So I'm really curious to know how you keep your finger on the pulse of e-learning, especially, and to some extent, as comfortable as you're answering this, what's it like working closely with your wife as a business partner?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about both those. So how I built it, obviously, I wasn't the one that physically built it. I wasn't typing out the code, but it was my wife and I's idea. So, finding that person, obviously we talked about that, but then going forward, I had to focus on what I knew I was good at. And the e-learning industry, I knew I had an understanding on that, really better than anybody else in our space. And also, another thing that used to drive me nuts, I'll give you a little story to this. One thing that drove me nuts about consulting is I would be there creating these training programs for people, and I'd have to talk to the client, and they would just be annoyed that they had to talk to me. So they would ignore my emails, or I'd have to swing by their cubicle to ask them questions, and they would always roll their eyes, and it kind of wears on you. You're always bugging people, it felt like. But I needed their input in order to get my job done. So knowing how much that frustrated me, I remember when we launched. So if I'm not coding, then I'm supporting, and I know how to support people in WordPress, and that's where I put all my energy at the time. My wife and I were like, all right, we're going to be so responsive with support, it's just going to blow people away, and that was kind of that's what we started off doing, and that's how we started building a positive relationship with our customers, the ones that were like, these new guys, let's try them out and see how that goes. And they would send us a question, and it was like, boom, they would get a response like almost immediately. It's funny because we really wanted to form that positive interaction right from the get-go, be it support or pre-sales. So that we created that positive momentum in that first year doing that. And then at the same time, I'm still writing about e-learning. Obviously I write on the blog, but I also write for publications and magazines in the field. So it requires me to make sure I know what I'm talking about. So I'm also reading what's going on in the field, and partly because I just find it interesting, but also just it helps me. Now I view it as it helps me know our product better. It helps me expand our product in smart ways. I mean, sure, we could throw a bunch of features at it, and we do have a lot of features, as anybody that uses LearnDash would attest to, but those are developed with specific intent, whereas, we could put in every trend that is out there in e-learning. We don't. So, as we continue to build it, which now we have, full-time employees and developer, and as we continue to build this stuff out, a lot of that feature input is coming from what I happen to know about the industry. But also it's kind of cool too, as you build a team, they come up with nice ideas, or if they're talking with a customer and supporting someone, they come up with ideas too. So it's definitely not all me, but it's just, it kind of starts like feeding itself. It's a very organic thing. The second part of your question though, I will talk about with working with my wife. I tell people all the time, it was very challenging at first. At the time I was always gone on the road with consulting, and she was in grad school.
Wow.
When I decided to take the leap, about 4 months, it was in April of 2013, take the leap and leave my consulting career and go to LearnDash full time. I was like home all the time, and that was kind of new for us. And I remember we were just moving in together as well. We hadn't been married that long, so it was a challenge. And she was done with school. I remember she graduated, so suddenly we were both home. So that getting an understanding of each other's working styles was a process. And then we would work all the time together. So when you're not working, you just like want to veg out and just like not do anything. And from a personal standpoint, you gotta invest in your relationship. That's just, you can't just think that that's gonna stay healthy unless you actively are investing in it and making date nights where you don't talk about work and stuff. So
Right.
that was a big learning curve. And now we're at a point like we work in different at our home office. We work in different sections and different offices, and we have Slack, so our whole team is on Slack, including us. So I'll talk with her on Slack, rather than going to the same room as her. Just it does create a little bit of sometimes that needed distance, and then we at the end of the day we both kind of meet in the kitchen. So it's nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I bet like talking work like more or less just on Slack is probably creates like a little bit of like cognitive dissonance between work and home life.
It really does.
So.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works, but yeah, it's been Slack's been actually a great tool obviously for our team, and as it has been for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you launched in late 2012, early 2013, right?
Yes.
And it's been about 4 years, a little more than 4 years now. So what kind of transformations has LearnDash gone through since it first launched?
Many. I'll give a little story. We were, in the very beginning, we got to market. We wanted to get to market quick, and we were doing well in that, but our focus was mainly in the e-learning space. Even though we were a WordPress plugin, my industry was e-learning, so a lot of the focus was there, and it made sense. As time went on, we grew our presence in WordPress, and so we realized that we needed to do things differently based on the feedback we were getting from WordPress developers that were working with LearnDash at the time. So we realized we needed to do things differently and get out of our own way in some respects. So we actually hired I think this is 2015, we hired another firm to go through our entire code base and redo it. And
Wow.
it was stressful, but it was so necessary because I look back on it now, and it's one of the smartest things we ever did. Now developers can use use LearnDash from a WordPress background and create really amazing things. And we have all the like nice inline documentation, and everything looks the way that they would expect, and we try to really go over and above on that. And that's a testament to that firm, but it's also a testament to our employees now who work on it, and they continue that. So that was a huge, like I said, in 2015 to essentially say like, okay, now we're going to redo everything.
Yeah.
It was a process, but it was a needed growing pain. And looking back, like I said, it's one of the best things that we did, because now at the time that was one of the biggest criticisms that we would come across, and now it's like it's virtually not there.
Yeah, even I was digging into a little bit of like either one of your plugins or one of the hooks to kind of customize my own thing. It turns out I didn't need to. You already actually had that extension, and I found it.
All right.
But that is one thing that's big in the WordPress community, especially, is it's open source, and so if I need to add something, there are ways that I should be able to easily do it, right, without like hacking the plugin. So that's really great to hear, and I'm sure it's probably helped your growth quite a bit, right? Because now you have other people kind of developing
Absolutely.
Add-ons or extensions for LearnDash or things like that.
Yeah, I know so. I know that that's really helped us.
That's fantastic. So the last official question, I guess, right? What are your plans for the future? We are recording this it's May now. And this episode is coming out probably in July. So look into your crystal ball, which is the present for our listeners. And what are your plans for the future of LearnDash?
Oh, okay. So there's a lot of different futures. There's the immediate future. There's a little bit more long term. So certainly REST API is on our radar. We're really digging into that now, and starting getting the wheels in motion for that this year. But I think REST API in general still has some maturing to do before people really fully understand the ways and different ways to use it. And that's perfectly fine. It's the nature of anything. So that's definitely on the radar for the future. Mobile learning is huge. It's enormous. And so the mobile space is something that we're looking at. And, be it with apps or what have you, I think that's definitely something. Those are conversations I'm having today with people. So, nothing is currently being worked on at this moment, but it's definitely going to be, as of May. So maybe in July that'll be different. But there's that piece. In the immediate future, we have some really cool stuff in the pipeline. We're doing some improvements to our reporting extension Pro panel based on feedback. We did a complete overhaul of that code back in late 2016, so that was well received. And then around videos as well. So in the immediate term, one of the features that we have coming out will probably be out by the time this is released is more elaborate ways to leverage video throughout a course. So it's more tracking usage of viewership and controlling how a user is pushed along in a course based on if they watch the video or not. Something that's a little bit more control over the learning path based on videos, because that's we get a lot of questions about that. Obviously videos are a great way to learn, so we want to create, and we're pretty much done. We're getting into testing, but some new functionality around how videos are presented in LearnDash and in online courses in general.
Man, that's excellent. Well, I will look forward to that feature, because the first course I launched on WP in 1 month was not video based, and it is my least popular course.
Yeah.
So videos, I mean, especially if you're, my courses kind of teach people learn by doing how to build a thing, and videos are the way to do it. So my Beaver Builder course is very popular.
Great course too.
Oh, thank you very much. It is mostly video, and I just kind of redesigned my module page to take advantage of the videos more than previously. So really looking forward to that feature.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So before we get to the bonus questions, which I know I haven't given you, so those will be off the top of your head. The last question, my favorite question, do you have any trade secrets for us?
Trade secrets. Yeah, I think one of the, and this isn't anything new, so I guess it's not a secret, but I guess maybe I'll lend my voice to it. But one of the biggest things that people overlook when creating an online product is how people are going to find it. They get the idea for the product and they focus solely on the product. Now, when we started in 2012, when I started the blog, I couldn't create the product. So just by de facto, I had to start creating buzz. I remember Googling WordPress LMS, and nothing came up in Google. I was like, well, okay, I don't know if that's good or bad yet, but I'm going to start blogging about a WordPress LMS. And now, that early marketing that I was doing is paying off in dividends. I mean, we don't do any paid marketing at this point. Everything comes in organically. And, had we not done that for 10 months ahead of time, by the time we launched, it was insane. People were chomping at the bit to get it before we even launched. So my advice or trade secret or whatever is, if you have an idea, great. Before you even build it, just start marketing it, because if there's no interest or if people don't understand the concept or whatever, then you don't have to waste your time building it.
That is excellent advice. Advice I definitely need to take. I take a very field of dreams approach to products. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
And I need to be better about. I actually wrote a note to myself during this interview that I need to blog more and create more buzz around my courses. So that's excellent advice. If you're looking to build a product, make sure to take that into account as well. So, Justin, thank you very much for that stuff. Here's the fast 5 questions that I like to ask. It's 5 or 6. I can't find the 6th one. So
fast 5 sounds better than fast 6.
Yeah, exactly. So Though I might get sued by is it Universal for the Fast and the Furious movies? So just top of your head, answer these questions.
Okay.
What book are you currently reading, or the last book you read?
Oh, this is gonna be so lame. It's actually I have it right next to it, the Italian Gambit System. It's a chess book. I play chess, and I love just learning different opening theory and playing. I play online. I have a chess group that I go to. So yeah, that's kind of my outlet in some ways. When I'm not thinking about work, when you think about chess, you can't really focus on anything else, or you're going to get destroyed in the game. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I definitely like that it's Italian. Awesome. What music do you like to listen to?
Oh, I like everything, but recently I'm kind of making fun of myself because probably within the past 4 years, 3-4 years, I'm really into country. I used to make fun of my dad for listening to it, and now I'm like, yeah, this is my jam. So country, but I like it all. Even from to classical. My wife Chloe, she's trained to play cello, so she went to school for playing cello and such. So that's grown on me as well. And I'm kind of a connoisseur of music. I like most.
Nice, that's awesome. I definitely make fun of my wife for listening to country music too. So.
Yeah. It's not all bad. Give it a shot.
Yeah. I definitely like Brad Paisley. He has a song about cigars, and I really dig that. So, what is your favorite food?
Nachos. And I'm going to specify that it has to have a cheesy sauce, not that real cheese stuff. It has to be like a cheesy sauce on it, because when it's real cheese, it cools, it gets hard, and then it's just bad.
Yeah, so it's got to be like that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get nachos now. What is your favorite sports team? This could be any sport. I interviewed Chris Badgett, and he mentioned a Iditarod, a guy from the Iditarod. So it doesn't have to be a major sport, just your favorite sports team.
I'm going to give you a couple. The U.S. men's national soccer team. I love soccer. I played it in college, so that's kind of, I just love watching it. And so them, and then Detroit Red Wings hockey.
Nice. Are you from Detroit?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Michigan.
Nice. And the last question, you don't have to answer this right off the top of your head. It's a little bit more involved, I guess. How did you learn what you know?
I guess it would depend on what I know, which, depending on how you're talking to, it might be something different. But let's see. I think in terms of the e-learning space, I just kind of fell into it. I had a couple internships in college, and my first internship, I remember, it was for the HR department of an automotive supplier, and we were building a corporate university. Go figure, right? And now, then I remember I did that for a couple of years, and then I ended up going to grad school, and then out of grad school, I hired into this consulting firm, and I ended up in the training and development space of that thing, because I just had some background experience and whatnot. So, and then I started doing consulting gigs. So that's how I, came about knowing, my industry, or getting introduced to my industry. And then, one other thing that I feel I like to write, I like to blog and everything. And it's funny is I just always have enjoyed writing. I remember in university when there'd be tests and stuff, and if it was an all essay test, people would be groaning, and I'd be like, yes, because it was, I feel like the more I wrote, the better I got. And if I didn't know the answer, I could always eloquently dodge it, even in my writing. So, yeah. So I think it really comes down to is in both those, it was just kind of practice. How did I come to know what I know? It was having an interest in writing, practicing writing, having an interest in e-learning and learning management, and practicing through obviously working. And then over time, it just kind of refines itself.
That's fantastic. So, well, that's all 5 questions I've got for you. Justin, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been fun, Joe. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much to our sponsors, Liquid Web, who's a season-long sponsor, and WP Site Care. Be sure to check them out. They're great services, both of them, and they're big supporters of the WordPress community. And finally, if you like the show, please go ahead and rate us and review us in iTunes or Apple Podcasts, which they recently changed their name to. That really helps people discover the show. So the more people discover the show, the more listeners we have, and the longer I'll be able to do this. So head on over to Apple Podcasts, which is also iTunes, and leave us a rating and review, and maybe I'll even read it on the show. So thanks so much for listening. Until next time, get out there and build something.